Hey Planeswalkers, this is Eric again from Bane Alley Magic, bringing you another weekly deck tech video, and this week we're talking about Ghalta Primal Hunger. But before we get into that, I'd just like to remind you to please hit that like button, or maybe even that subscribe button. It helps out a lot. So Ghalta is a 12/12 legendary Elder Dinosaur for 10 and 2 green. That's right, 12 mana to cast this guy, but Ghalta Primal Hunger costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control, and Ghalta also has Trample. So, a pretty powerful 12/12 commander for potentially just 2 mana. Now, first off, there is something I need to say, and I swear to God this is true. The idea for this deck came to me in a dream. Now, normally in my dreams, I get eaten alive by giant monsters, but this time, Ghalta just said to me, and I was like, oh yes, of course, I will build a Ghalta deck. And so I did. And I have to tell you that just building this deck is super fun, and playing it is absolutely hilarious. You can easily build this deck with the extra cards you have lying around, and it can still perform really well. In my first game, I played with the deck. I was able to cast Ghalta on turn 3. It went something like this. Turn 1, Forest into Soul Ring. Turn 2, I got another Forest, and then I cast an Old Growth Dryads, and then Rishkar, Pima Renegade, so I put a +1/+1 counter on both those creatures, and then they were both able to also tap for mana. And then turn 3, get another Forest, Soul Ring, and you know, with everything there, I was just able to cast Ghalta super easily. Turn 3, pretty sweet, and I did end up winning that game. Any Ghalta player will tell you that 90% of the time you are casting him for only 2 mana, as this effect does in fact also reduce his commander tax. And yes, if you are wondering, Ghalta is male. How do we know?
Somebody go out in the park and pull up the dinosaur's cards?
Well, no. We know this because it just so happens that in the German edition of the card, the flavor text reads, "Every one of his steps makes Ixalan tremble." So Ghalta is a guy, and also, while we're on the subject, he'd just like me to say, he's a smooth pimp who loves the ladies. But anyway, when I looked up the rules for Ghalta, one thing I was very surprised to find was this. The total cost to cast Ghalta is locked in before you pay that cost. What that means is, basically, you can declare the cost of a spell before you actually pay the mana for it. What that means with Ghalta is, well, let's say you have a 1/1 Eldrazi Scion token on the battlefield. You are able to both use the token's 1 power to reduce Ghalta's mana cost by 1, and then sacrifice the token to pay for another 1 mana. It sounded so strange I had to ask a judge, but it turns out that is the way it works. Pretty crazy. So, the goal of this deck is obviously to eat your opponents alive with literally the highest powered legendary creature in the entire game. Dealing lethal commander damage with Ghalta is super easy. So easy, in fact, all of your opponents will be terrified. It will not matter if he gets countered, though. You just cast him again for 2 mana. If they destroy him, you just cast him again for 2 mana. It doesn't matter if he gets blocked, he can just trample over almost all of your opponent's creatures. I mean, you practically want them to block with everything, so you can board wipe them. But in my opinion, the most fun thing of all is to equip Ghalta with crazy equipment. Like, you know, maybe Dark Steel Plate, throw on a Basilisk collar, maybe we'll give him some, Greaves, throw on some Fleet Feather Sandals maybe, so he can have flying, give him the Helm of Kaldra, maybe the Sword and Shield of Kaldra. Alright, so I actually don't run all of that equipment, but anyway, I promise, the look of horror on your opponent's faces when they see a flying, indestructible, Ghalta is just priceless. And even if your opponents are playing really broken decks, you can often just eat them alive before they can spit. Let's get into the deck, starting with the creatures as always. First, we got Experiment 1, which is a human ooze with Evolve, which means whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature has a greater power or toughness than this creature, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Experiment 1 is a 1/1, and it says you can remove 2 +1/+1 counters from Experiment 1 to regenerate Experiment 1. So regenerate means that if the creature would die, the next time the creature would die, instead it doesn't die, and you instead remove it from combat and you tap it. So Experiment 1 is a pretty sweet 1-drop for this deck because it can get really big. The one thing everyone needs to remember with evolved creatures is to cast them before anything else. I can't tell you how many times I've made the mistake of playing a bunch of stuff that's really big and powerful and then using my last mana at the end to cast an Experiment 1 and then been like, oh my gosh, I should have just cast Experiment 1 first, so it would have evolved that many times. So don't make that mistake. Next we got Ovia Pashiri, Sage Lifecrafter, which is 1 green for a 1/2 human artificer, and you can pay 2 and a green and tap her to create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token, or you can pay 4 and a green and tap her to create an XX colorless construct artifact creature token, where X is the number of creatures you control. Pretty sweet for just using our creatures to make more big creatures, mostly for the second ability. Of course, you'll be using the first ability in the beginning, but the second ability, just making big creatures, really helps with casting Ghalta, obviously. Next, we have Old Growth Dryads. 1 green for a 3/3 Dryad. When Old Growth Dryads enters the battlefield, each opponent may search his or her library for a basic land card and put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle his or her library. Yeah, that sounds pretty bad, and normally Old Growth Dryads doesn't go in any deck, but man, Old Growth Dryads is fabulous in this deck, because yeah, we might be giving our opponents 1 mana, but with our commander, we are ramping into him with 3 mana. We are getting 3 ramp out of the deal with his power of 3. So really great deal with Ghalta Primal Hunger. Next, into the 2 drops, we have Incubation Druid, a 0/2 elf druid for 1 and a green. And Incubation Druid says you can tap it to add 1 mana of any type of a land you control could produce. If Incubation Druid has a +1/+1 counter on it, add 3 mana of that type instead. And it has Adapt 3 for 3 and a green, so you can pay that 5 mana. And if this creature has no +1/+1 counters on it, you put 3 +1/+1 counters on it. So really great ramp source with Ghalta Primal Hunger. Lots of people put Lana War Elves and, Elvish Mystic into this deck. I'm really not a fan of those cards in Commander because they just have 1 toughness and 1 power. And, if you're going to have creatures that ramp, you might as well make them bigger creatures because, they just die often, and you're usually not using ramp creatures as attackers. And so, more often than not, I'm putting in the Mono Rocks instead of the creatures that ramp, but in this deck, obviously, you got to put in the creature ramp because, you want to cast Ghalta really quickly, and their power helps you cast them. Next, we have Chandler Initiate. Excuse me. A 3/4 human druid for 1 and a green, and when Chandler Initiate enters the battlefield, you put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control, which is always going to be Chandler Initiate herself. And you can tap Chandler Initiate and remove a -1/-1 counter from Chandler Initiate and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So Chandler Initiate helps you ramp, and she gets bigger, potentially all the way up to a 3/4, which is going to help you cast Ghalta. Next, we have Scavenging Ooze, 1 and a green for a 2/2 ooze, and you can pay a green to exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on Scavenging Ooze, and you gain 1 life. Also really great with Ghalta to just get rid of those pesky cards from our opponent's graveyards and to have a really big creature. Next, we have our 3 drops, starting with Rishkar Pima Renegade, 2 and a green for a 2/2 elf druid, and when Rishkar Pima Renegade enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Each creature you control with a counter on it has tap to add 1 mana to your mana pool. So Rishkar is really helpful in this deck, turns everything into a mana dork, and pumps them up as well, which altogether is all really helpful for casting Ghalta for just 2 mana. Next, we have Manglehorn, 2 and a green for a 2/2 beast. When Manglehorn enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact. Artifacts your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. We have quite a bit of artifact and enchantment removal in this deck because those are things that can bog us down. And what we want to do is the players that are trying to control us with those things, we want to destroy those things and then just kill that player as quickly as possible. Get rid of the threatening player that's playing all the really broken permanents. You know, we're going to have to destroy those permanents sometimes to do that, and so we got cards like Manglehorn and Reclamation Sage. Reclamation Sage, also known as Rec Sage, is a 2/1 elf shaman for 2 and a green, and when Rec Sage enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. Next, we have Prowling Serpapod, 1 and 2 green for a 4/3 cat snake. Prowling Serpapod can't be countered, and creature spells you control can't be countered. Really helpful in the Ghalta deck. Next, we have Ronis the Indomitable, 2 and a green for a legendary god with Death Touch and Indestructible, which is a 5/5. Ronis the Indomitable can't attack or block unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater. Yeah, not hard in this deck. And for 2 and a green, another target creature gets +2/+0 and gains trample until the end of the turn. So, I used to run actually Nylea as the god, and then I just realized Ronis is just strictly better Nylea. 1 less to cast, 1 less to activate that ability. Sure, they don't get the toughness like Nylea gives them the toughness, but I mean, still, Ghalta doesn't need any more toughness than he already has. He just needs power. So next we have Fierce Empath, 2 and a green for a 1/1 elf. When Fierce Empath enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 6 or greater, reveal it and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So you'll see once we get to the 6 drops what kind of stuff we can be getting with that. But it's just really good to be able to cast a cheap creature, tutor up a big creature. You get 2 creatures for 1 card, which all helps you cast Ghalta. Next we have Steel Leaf Champion, 3 green for a 5/4 elf knight. Steel Leaf Champion can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Yeah, a really great, powerful card, essential for any green stompy deck. Next we have Wayward Swordtooth, 2 and a green for a 5/5 dinosaur with Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. And you may play an additional land on each of your turns, and if Wayward Swordtooth, if you have the City's Wayward Swordtooth can't attack or block unless you have the City's Blessing. Alright, next we got Thrashing Brontodon, 1 and 2 green for a 3/4 dinosaur. You can pay 1 and sacrifice Thrashing Brontodon to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Yeah, more artifact or enchantment removal, which helps us get in with our huge creatures. By the way, Wayward Swordtooth, in Commander, you can easily get the City's Blessing, so you'll have no problem attacking with Wayward Swordtooth. Next, we have Inexorable Blob, 2 and a green for a 3/3 ooze, which has Delirium. Whenever Inexorable Blob attacks, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, put a 3/3 green ooze creature token onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. So, this can help create more creatures, and just, this is mostly here just to pump out more creatures that will help us cast Ghalta and, give us a little board of blockers. Next we have Eternal Witness, 1 and 2 green for a 2/1 human shaman. When Eternal Witness enters the battlefield, you may return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Pretty essential for any green deck, helping you get cards back from your graveyard. Next we have Beast Whisperer, a 2/3 elf druid for 2 and 2 green, and it says whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. Again, that's on cast, so it doesn't matter if the creature spell gets countered. The creature does not have to enter the battlefield. It's like right as soon as you cast the spell, you draw a card. Really great with Ghalta Primal Hunger. We have, I believe, 35 creatures in the deck. I'm going to double check that right now. But yeah, we have quite a few creatures in the deck. This can combo off really easy and just draw us tons of cards in one turn. So it looks like 32 creatures, 33 if you include Ghalta. Next, we have Traxos, Scourge of Krug, a 7/7 for 4 mana with Trample. Yeah, such a great deal. Traxos, Scourge of Krug enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during your untap step. Whenever you cast a historic spell, however, you untap Traxos. So artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are all historic. So Traxos, Scourge of Krug is not hard to untap, but even if he is tapped, all by himself, he's taking 7 mana off of Ghalta's casting cost. Next, we have Golden Guardian, a 4/4 golem with Defender for 4 mana, and you can pay 2 mana to have Golden Guardian fight another target creature you control. When Golden Guardian dies this turn, you return it to the battlefield transformed under your control into Goldforge Garrison, which is a land that taps to add 2 mana of any one color to your mana pool, or you can pay 4 and tap it to create a 4/4 colorless golem out of artifact creature token. So, pumps out tokens just like we want for casting Ghalta, and it helps us just ramp all by itself, adding 2 mana of any color to our mana pool. We are paying mono green, so any one color doesn't exactly matter, but really cool card. I'm glad I found a home for it. Next, we have Timur Sabretooth, 4 mana, 2 and 2 green for a 4/3 cat, and it says you can pay 1 and a green, and you may return another creature you control to its owner's hand. If you do, Timur Sabretooth gains Indestructible until the end of the turn. So really great for saving any creatures we want from a board wipe or from getting exiled, or if we have some creature that maybe has some enter the battlefield effect, we can return it to our hand and recast it and get that enter the battlefield effect again. Timur Sabretooth is a really sweet card in Commander. Next we have Wolfir Silverheart, 3 and 2 green for a 4/4 Wolf Warrior with Soulbound. You may pair this creature with another unpaired creature. When either enters the battlefield, they remain paired for as long as you control both of them. As long as Wolfir Silverheart is paired with another creature, each of those creatures gets +4/+4. So you can have Ghalta Primal Hunger enter the battlefield as a 16/16, and Wolfir Silverheart will be an 8/8. Not a bad deal at all. Really cool card. Again, another essential for any green stompy deck. Next we have Crash of Rhino Beetles, 4 and a green for a 5/5 insect with Trample, and Crash of Rhino Beetles gets +10/+10 as long as you control 10 or more lands, which in Commander is not hard to do whatsoever. We're in a late game format, and so we plan on having the late game effects actually happening. Crash of Rhino Beetles will be going off and will be becoming a 15/15 as long as it remains on the battlefield. Really cool card. Next we have Thragtusk, 4 and a green for a 5/3 beast. When it enters the battlefield you gain 5 life, and when it leaves the battlefield you create a 3/3 green beast creature token. Excellent. Next we have Garrix Pack Leader, 4 and a green for a 4/4 beast. Whenever another creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. Yeah, this is going to draw us tons of cards with this deck, as long as we get it out early. Next we have Gigantasaurus, a 10/10 dinosaur for 5 green. And his flavor text says, each tooth is the length of a horse, and new ones grow in every 16 days. Let's get a closer look. And that's Vivian Reed. So yeah, no abilities at all, but probably one of the most powerful 5-drops ever, especially just having the most power, obviously. Next we have Uvenwald Observer, 4 and 2 green for a 6/6 Tree Folk. Whenever a creature you control with toughness 4 or greater dies, you draw a card. So I'll draw us a few cards. Next we have Duplicant, 6 mana for a 2/4 Shapeshifter with Imprint. When Duplicant enters the battlefield, you may exile target non-token creature. As long as a card exiled with Duplicant is a creature card, Duplicant has the power and toughness and creature types of the last creature card exiled with Duplicant. It is still a Shapeshifter. So this is mostly in the deck because we're playing mono green and we need creature removal. Sometimes we need to exile creatures. Green has almost no solid creature removal spells. What little they do have, we are running in the deck, but we need a little bit more. So we have Duplicant, pretty excellent creature removal card. Next we have Rampaging Bailiffs, 4 and 2 green for a 6/6 Trample with Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may create a 4/4 green beast creature token. Yeah, really excellent card in Commander, man. This thing can go off and get you tons of beasts. Really helpful with Ghalta. Next we have Protean Hulk, 5 and 2 green for a 6/6 beast. And when Protean Hulk dies, search your library for any number of creature cards with total converted mana cost 6 or less, and put them onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. So, like a lot of people, when I first saw this, I thought it was like, what, you mean you get every single creature converted mana cost 6 or less and put them on the battlefield? No, it's the total converted mana cost of those creatures. So you could get a 6-drop and and a 2-drop. No. You could get a 4-drop and a 2-drop, for example, and that would get your total converted mana cost 6 or less, but you can't get like more than that unless you happen to be running a bunch of XX creatures like Walking Ballista, which will die when it enters the battlefield, which is part of some kind of weird ultimate combo with Protean Hulk. That's not why it's in the deck. It's in the deck just to replace itself. It's a really cool creature. Next we have Caller of the Pack, 5 and 2 green for an 8/6 beast with trample and myriad, which means whenever this creature attacks, for each opponent other than the defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of this creature that's tapped and attacking that player, or a planeswalker he or she controls. Exile the tokens at the end of combat. So you get a copy of this for each opponent that's attacking the other opponents that you're not attacking with the original. And that is huge in Commander. Really great mono green stompy card. Unfortunately, the tokens are going to get exiled at the end of combat, so they're not going to be able to help us cast Ghalta Primal Hunger, but that's not why this is in the deck. This is in the deck to just smash some face. Next, we have Howl of the Night Pack for a sorcery. It is 6 and a green, so 7 mana, and you put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield for each forest you control. So yeah, this is a sorcery, but this can get us potentially a ton of wolves if we cast it late enough in the game, because we have quite a bit of forests in the deck. I believe 26, we'll make sure of that later, 26 or 27, maybe even 28. Alright, on to the non-creature spells, starting with our removal. Like I said, we're playing mono green, and mono green doesn't have a lot of creature removal, so we have some colorless removal here, starting with Brittle Effigy, 1 mana for an artifact that says you can pay 4 and tap it to exile target creature. This is a really sweet colorless exile creature spell. Can go in any deck that needs help removing creatures, you know, if you're playing green or blue. Next we have Boom Pile, 4 mana for an artifact that says tap it and flip a coin. If you win the flip, destroy all non-land permanents. Yeah, this is a really sweet colorless board wipe. Removes all non-land permanents, you know, which again, you know, green doesn't do well all by itself, so we need that. Same thing with Oblivion Stone. 3 mana for an artifact, which says you can pay 4 and tap it to put a fate counter on target permanent, or you can pay 5 and tap it and sacrifice it to destroy each non-land permanent without a fate counter on it, then remove all fate counters from all permanents. Yeah, so another great colorless board wipe there. Next we have Beast Within, 2 and a green for an instant that lets you destroy any permanent, even a creature, and its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. So yeah, this will hit any permanent, you know, land, artifact, planeswalker, what have you, even a creature, which green normally can't just straight up destroy creatures, so that's why this is so good. Same thing with Song of the Dryads. It's a really great way for green to deal with creatures. It's 2 and a green for an aura that says enchant permanent. Enchanted permanent becomes a colorless forest. So it's really great to do this to someone's commander. Basically removes their commander from the game until they get a enchantment removal spell, because even if someone board wipes, you know, their commander is no longer a creature, so it doesn't die. It doesn't go back to the command zone. It just sticks around as a forest, which most of the time they even forget they can tap for mana. Next, we have some draw card spells. No, sorry. Next we have our equipment, which includes a draw card spell. So we have quite a bit of equipment to put on Ghalta and make him super scary. Starting with Sword of Fire and Ice, 3 mana for an artifact equipment, which is equipped 2. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from red and blue. And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, Sword of Fire and Ice deals 2 damage to target creature or player, and you draw a card. So yeah, actually, this card does a lot more work than you might think it does, and just drawing a card is really fabulous in any case. And deals combat damage to a player, you know, is something that all of these swords say, and, you know, since Ghalta has Trample, I mean, he's going to be able to deal combat damage to a player very easily. Next we have Swiftfoot Boots, 2 mana for an equipment that has Equip 1. Equipped creature has Hexproof and Haste. Yeah, nothing's better than Ghalta with Haste. Next we have Lightning Greaves, 2 mana for an equipment with Equip 0. Equipped creature has Haste and Shroud. So remember, as long as it has Shroud, you can't equip any more equipment on it, so you kind of have to re-equip the Greaves onto something else before you want to equip Ghalta with any other type of equipment. Next we have Kusarigama, 3 mana for an equipment that says equipped creature has, you can pay 2 mana to give it +1/+0 till the end of the turn, and it has Equip 3, and more importantly, whenever equipped creature deals damage to a blocking creature, Kusarigama deals that much damage to each other creature defending player controls, which is really excellent, not only with Ghalta, but mainly with our other creatures, actually, because Ghalta has Trample, he's only going to be dealing exactly lethal to that creature. But with a creature like Gigantasaurus, for example, which doesn't have Trample, that means if they block Gigantasaurus, that means each of their creatures is going to be taking 10 damage. And actually, that's exactly what happened in a game I played this morning, and it was pretty sweet. Yeah, but even putting this on Ghalta actually works really well. Next, we have Darksteel Plate, 3 mana for an equipment that is indestructible. It gives our creature indestructible, and it's equipped 2. Next, we have Fire Shrieker, 3 mana for an equipment that gives the equipped creature double strike, and it's also equipped 2. Really great equipment to put on Ghalta, making it basically a one-hit kill. Next, we have Black Blade Reforged, 2 mana for a legendary artifact equipment, which has equip 7, but if you're equipping a legendary creature, such as Ghalta, it's only equip 3. And equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each land you control. In Commander, this is just such a powerful card, really essential with Ghalta to just beat your opponents down and deal them that lethal Commander damage right away. Next, we have Basilisk Collar, 1 mana for an equipment that's equipped 2. An equipped creature has Death Touch and Lifelink. Yeah, giving Ghalta Death Touch is huge because when you combine Death Touch with Trample, Ghalta just deals 1 damage to the blocking creature, which is enough to kill that creature, and all the rest of his damage automatically goes over to the opponent, no matter what the blocking creature's toughness is, because with Death Touch, you only need to deal 1 damage to kill the creature. So yeah, Death Touch combined with Trample is super powerful, and gaining a bit of life is also really important. Next, we have Whisper Silk Cloak, 3 mana for an equipment that's equipped 2. Equipped creature can't be blocked and has Shroud. If you get this onto Ghalta, you are definitely going to be killing somebody. They can't even block Ghalta whatsoever. They can't target Ghalta whatsoever. Unless they can board wipe, somebody's gonna die really quick with Whisper Silk Cloak. Alright, on to some draw card spells. Starting with Mouth to Feed. So the mouth part of Mouth to Feed is a sorcery for 2 and a green. Create a 3/3 hippo token. Sweet. And the Aftermath, which means you can cast this spell only from your graveyard, then exile it. So the Aftermath is Feed, 3 and a green, and it says draw a card for each creature you control with power 3 or greater. So this can definitely draw us quite a few cards in this deck. Next we have Oracle's Vault, 4 mana for an artifact that says pay 2 and tap it to exile the top card of your library. Until the end of the turn you may play that card, and you put a brick counter on Oracle's Vault. And then the next ability is you can tap it to exile the top card of your library. Until the end of the turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. Activate this ability only if there are 3 or more brick counters on Oracle's Vault. Excuse me. Activate this ability only if there are 3 or more brick counters on Oracle's Vault. So, as soon as there are 3 or more brick counters on this, you just get to cast the top card of your library for free. And even if it's a land and it's your turn, you get to play that land as your land for the turn. So, really great card advantage spell, especially in a deck like this where we do have quite a few cards that are high converted mana cost, but for the most part, we have a low curve in this deck, which is another thing I think is really sweet about this deck. It's a stompy deck that has a low curve. That's really cool. But also, because we have a low curve, most of the time we are going to be able to cast the cards we're exiling. And so that's often a disadvantage with Oracle's Vault, is that you're exiling cards without being able to cast them because you don't have the mana to cast your huge spells. So we get around that by having a low curve in this deck. Next we have Howling Mine, 2 mana for an artifact that says at the beginning of each player's draw step, if Howling Mine is untapped, that player draws an additional card. Normally I don't put group huggy cards in the deck, but I do when our deck is just really trying to race the board, For example, something like Perforos, Ghalta here. We're just basically trying to race the board, get our ramp out as quickly as possible, because when we ramp and we draw cards, it's kind of better than when everyone else does, because when we're able to get Beast Whisperer out, for example, then suddenly, we can just be drawing card after card after card, and we have a huge board full of monsters that all just go in and kill everyone at once. So I guess that's the only way I can explain it, is that it's just a race against time, And even though the opponents are drawing cards, I feel like Howling Mine does actually end up helping us in the end. And like I said, we need a low mana curve in this deck, so we got a really cheap draw card spell here. Next we have Harmonize, 4 mana, 2 and 2 green for a sorcery that says draw 3 cards. Pretty sweet. Next we have Fecundity, 2 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature dies, that creature's controller may draw a card. So even your opponents, but again, I think it benefits you most of all because often your creatures are going to be the ones that are targeted because everyone is terrified of you. Next we have Colossal Majesty, 2 and a green for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you draw a card. Yeah, this will be going off pretty much every turn because we have tons of huge creatures. Next we have our ramp spells, starting with Soul Ring, then on to Mind Stone, 2 mana for an artifact that taps to add a colorless, or you can pay 1 and tap it and draw a card. Next we have Spectral Searchlight, 3 mana for an artifact that taps and it says choose target player, then that player adds 1 mana of any color they choose. So if we need to help out our opponent, cast a counterspell, we can do that with Spectral Spotlight. But most of the time it's just for us. Next we have From Beyond, 3 and a green for an enchantment with Devoid, so it technically has no color. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion creature token onto the battlefield. It has sacrifice this creature to add 1 mana to your mana pool, and you can pay 1 and a green and sacrifice From Beyond to search your library for an Eldrazi card, which we have none in this deck. But what's more important is the first ability, because as we explained in the beginning of the video, you are able to use the Scion's toughness to reduce Ghalta's mana cost, in addition to sacrificing the Scion to pay for another 1 mana for Ghalta because of the special rules for Ghalta. If you don't believe me, go ahead and look it up. Next we have Unstable Obelisk, 3 mana for an artifact that taps for a colorless, or we can pay 7 and tap it and sacrifice it to destroy target permanent. Again, this is just because we're in mono green and we need some more solid creature removal, so that helps out a lot. Next we have Ronis's Monument, 3 mana for a legendary artifact that says green creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast a creature spell, you may give target creature you control +2/+2 and trample until the end of the turn. So Rona's Monument is probably one of the most important artifacts in the deck. You know, you just have Ghalta out, and then you cast, 3 or 4 creatures. Suddenly, Ghalta's getting +6 or +8, and just dealing lethal commander damage really quickly. A great way to give Ghalta enough power to trample over all your opponent's creatures. Such a great artifact in this deck. In my first game, this is the artifact that definitely won me the game. Next we have Emerald Medallion, 2 mana for an artifact. Green spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Excellent. Then we have Zendikar Resurgent, 5 and 2 green for an enchantment. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana to your mana pool of any type that land produced. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you draw a card. So yeah, this doubles all of our mana, and it draws us tons of cards. This can really easily chain off to where we're just casting a creature, drawing a card, and then we're casting another creature, drawing a card, casting another creature, drawing a card, because this also gives us so much mana. We're able to do that. Very cool card, essential for pretty much any green deck. Next we have our 1 Planeswalker in the deck, which is Nissa, Vital Force. 3 and 2 green for a Planeswalker that enters with 5 loyalty counters. And she says, +1, untap target land you control. Until your next turn, it becomes a 5/5 elemental creature token with haste, or elemental creature with haste, not a token. It is still a land. -3, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. A little bit of a Eternal Witness effect there, sort of. And for -6, you get an emblem with whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. So if you haven't figured it out yet, you can ultimate this on the turn after you cast it. Yeah, on the turn you cast it, you put it up to 6. The turn after you cast it, you -6, and you get that emblem, and that is pretty sweet with this deck. Next, we have Seasons Past. 4 and 2 green for a sorcery. Return any number of cards with different converted mana costs from your graveyard to your hand, and put Seasons Past on the bottom of its owner's library. So yeah, you could potentially draw this again if you shuffle your library, and it lets you get multiple cards from your graveyard back to your hand. Super helpful in this deck. Well, alright, that brings us to the lands. So, for our lands, we're going to start off with our cycling lands. By the way, we have 37 lands in the deck, which is pretty low, but like I said, we got a low mana curve, which is super cool and quite ironic with a commander that has a CMC of 12. Anyway, Tranquil Thicket is a cycling land, so cycling means you can pay the cycling cost, discard the card, and then draw a card. The reason you do this with lands is perhaps you have too many lands already and you don't need another land, so you just pay the cycling cost and you replace that land card with a different card. You know, pretty helpful when you're mana flooded. So, Tranquil Thicket enters tapped. It taps to add a green, or you can cycle it away for 1 green. Slippery Karst enters tapped. It taps to add a green, or you can cycle it away for 2 mana. Desert of the Indomitable enters tapped, taps to add a green, or you can cycle it away for 1 and a green. Temple of the False God is a land that taps for 2 mana. You activate this ability only if you control 5 or more lands. Again, we're playing a late game format in which if you don't have 5 lands, you're probably going to be losing the game anyway. So I think Temple of the False God is fabulous for Commander. I put it in almost every single Commander deck, actually every Commander deck I put it in, because I've never had a situation where I didn't have 5 lands. You know, it's never happened. I always end up getting 5 lands. So Temple of the False God, I've never regretted playing it. Get them now. Next we have Memorial to Unity, which enters tapped. It taps to add a green, or you can pay 2 and a green and sacrifice it to look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Helps us get creatures, and that's pretty sweet. Next we have Yeren Void, which is a land that taps to add a colorless, or and when it enters the battlefield, you get to scry 1. Excuse me. So you get to look at the top card of your library and put it on the top or bottom of your library. So helps us fix what card we're going to draw next. Pretty sweet card. Next we have Seagate Wreckage, a land that taps to add a colorless mana to our mana pool, or we can pay 2 and a colorless and tap it to draw a card. Activate this ability only if we have no cards in our hand. Next we have Rogue's Passage, which taps to add a colorless, or we can pay 4 and tap it to give target creature unblockable this turn. So really essential with Ghalta to get in with that commander damage. And finally we have Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, which is a legendary land that taps to add a colorless, or you can pay 2 and tap it and choose a color. Add to your mana pool any amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion to that color. So your devotion to a color is the number of mana symbols of that color and the mana costs of permanents you control. So if, for example, you control the Gigantasaurus, you could tap 2 and tap this to add 5 green mana to your mana pool. And finally, we have 28 forests. So I do not run Reliquary Tower in the deck at the moment just because I'm not really drawing that many cards. We also have a low converted mana cost, so I'm usually able to cast all the cards from my hand pretty quickly. That's in fact why we have Seagate Wreckage, just so we can draw more cards, because we will often end up in a situation where we have no cards in our hand because we just have a low curve, and that's the way it works sometimes. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit that like or subscribe button. It helps out a lot. This is Eric from Bane Alley Magic signing off. Until next time, take care, take it easy.